The shot rang through the elite shooters club, its sharp echo hanging in the air as Blake Radcliffe lowered his custom Remington, a smug smile playing on his lips. His bullseye was perfect, as always, a show of dominance, and the crowd, dressed in their finest shooting gear, applauded as though it were a performance. Blake was the king of this realm, where wealth, status, and skills separated him from everyone else. But then came Emma Miller, a figure who didn't belong, dressed in humble attire, unnoticed by all but the smirking Blake. Her challenge was met with scorn, her presence nothing more than an opportunity for amusement. Yet when Emma took her shot, something happened that no one expected. A perfect bullseye. And that was just the beginning. Unbeknownst to Blake, Emma was not the amateur he had mocked. She was someone far more dangerous, someone with a past that could not be ignored. And as she silently accepted his challenge, the world of elite shooters was about to change in a way Blake never saw coming. The sound of a perfect shot echoed through the elite shooters club, followed by thunderous applause from wealthy patrons dressed in designer shooting gear. Blake Radcliffe lowered his custom Remington, a smirk spreading across his tanned face as the target revealed another bullseye. This was his kingdom, a world where money, power, and skill created an impenetrable barrier between the elite and everyone else. If you've ever been underestimated or made to feel invisible, you might want to stay for what happened next, the moment that changed everything at America's most prestigious shooting range. Emma Miller stood near the entrance, clutching her worn leather purse. Her simple blue cardigan and department store jeans made her stand out like a dandelion in a rose garden. At 35, she was neither young enough to turn heads nor successful enough to command respect in this circle. The receptionist, a young woman with immaculate blonde hair and a practiced smile, looked up, then immediately dismissed her, as though Emma were merely a distraction. "Excuse me," Emma said softly. "I'd like to register for today's open practice session." The receptionist glanced up again, this time allowing her gaze to travel from Emma's sensible shoes to her simple ponytail. "Membership cards only," she replied dismissively. Emma took a deep breath, pulling out a crinkled envelope. "I have a day pass." It was a gift. Blake noticed the newcomer from across the room. At 42, he was at the peak of his career, a 5-time national champion, Olympic gold medalist, and the face of Remington's premium line. His family's oil fortune had given him access to the best training since childhood, and his natural talent had done the rest. Well, Blake drawled loudly. "Looks like someone took a wrong turn on the way to Walmart." His companions laughed on cue, drawing more attention to Emma, who was making her way to the basic range, eyes fixed on the floor. Rebecca Johnson, the club's manager and a former competitive shooter herself, frowned at Blake's comment but said nothing. Emma found a spot at the far end of the basic range. She carefully placed her purse on the small shelf and withdrew a cloth-wrapped package. With practiced movements, she unfolded the material to reveal a standard Glock 19, serviceable, but nothing like the custom pieces the club members wielded. Blake and his friends had migrated closer, their interest piqued by the opportunity for entertainment. $10 says she can't hit the target," one joked. Blake scoffed. "Make it 10,000. I'd bet she's never held a gun in her life." He sauntered over to Emma's station. "Excuse me, ma'am," he said, his false politeness dripping with condescension. "Are you sure you're in the right place? This isn't a knitting circle." Emma finally looked up, her hazel eyes meeting Blake's blue ones with a steadiness that momentarily threw him off balance. "I'm just here to practice," she said quietly. Blake recovered quickly. "Practice, honey? This is a place for serious shooters. $10,000 says you can't hit the bullseye from 50 yards. Emma's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. "I don't have that kind of money," she replied. Blake's smile widened. "If by some miracle you make the shot, I pay. If you miss, you leave and never come back. Deal?" Rebecca had approached during the exchange, concern evident. "Mr. Radcliffe, perhaps we should let our guest practice in peace." Blake waved her off without looking. "Stay out of this, Rebecca. We're just having a friendly wager." Emma's gaze dropped to her left hand, where a simple gold band encircled her ring finger. She twisted it once, a gesture so small that only the most observant would have noticed. "All right," she said quietly. Blake's eyebrows shot up in surprise before his face settled into a triumphant smirk. "Excellent. Ladies and gentlemen, we have ourselves a show." No one noticed the change in Emma's posture as she picked up her Glock, her spine straightening, shoulders relaxing, feet shifting into a perfectly balanced stance. No one recognized the expert grip and the controlled breathing pattern. And no one realized that the simple gold ring on her finger once belonged to one of the most legendary snipers in SEAL Team 6 history. 3 years earlier, Emma had stood under a gray April sky, the crisp snap of the Honor Guard's rifles cutting through the solemn silence of Arlington National Cemetery. The folded American flag pressed against her chest felt impossibly heavy as Emma watched her husband's casket being lowered into the ground. Master Chief Nathan Miller had served his country for 15 years, his exceptional skills as a sniper earning him both medals and the respectful nickname the Ghost among his peers. The official report cited a helicopter crash during a classified mission. Emma knew better. There were aspects of Nathan's death that would remain redacted forever. They had met in Burlington, Vermont, where Nathan was visiting a fellow SEAL recovering from injuries. Emma was working as an accountant, her life as predictable as the numbers she managed daily. Their meeting at a downtown coffee shop had stretched from quick apologies into hours of conversation. They married just 6 months later in a small ceremony attended by a few friends and Nathan's fellow operators, with vigilant eyes and guarded smiles. Life as a SEAL's wife had taught Emma to live with absence and uncertainty. Nathan would disappear for weeks or months, returning with new scars he wouldn't explain and nightmares he couldn't share. "I wish I could tell you everything," he would say, tracing her cheekbone with his calloused thumb. "But I can tell you this, you're the reason I fight to come home." It was during one extended period stateside, after a harrowing mission had left Nathan with a ligament tear in his knee, that he first took Emma to a shooting range. "If I'm going to be away so much," he had explained, adjusting her stance with gentle hands, "I want to know you can protect yourself." What began as a safety measure evolved into something more, a shared activity that gave Emma insight into her husband's world. Nathan turned out to be a patient instructor, and Emma an unexpectedly gifted student. "You're a natural," he'd whispered the first time she hit a bullseye. "You've got the 3 things that make a great shooter: steady hands, perfect vision, and the ability to stay calm under pressure." Over the next 3 years, whenever Nathan was home, they would practice together. He taught her everything: proper stance, breathing control, sight alignment, trigger discipline. "Shooting isn't about aggression," he would explain. "It's about absolute control, over your body, your breath, your fear." Emma absorbed every lesson, finding unexpected peace in the ritual. Those sessions at the range became sacred moments of connection that didn't require words. Sometimes his SEAL teammates would join them. "Boss never shuts up about your progress," one of them, Michael Reeves, had confided. "Says you're a better natural shot than half the guys he's trained." The last time they went shooting together was 2 days before Nathan left for his final mission. He had been unusually quiet, more focused on watching Emma than improving his own shots. "Promise me something," he said, his voice rough against her ear. "Promise me you'll keep practicing, even when I'm not here." Emma had nodded, not understanding the gravity behind his request. After the funeral, she couldn't bring herself to visit a range. Nathan's guns remained locked in their safe, untouched. She moved to Boston for a fresh start, taking a position at a corporate accounting firm where no one knew her as the widow of a fallen SEAL. Until last week, when a package arrived from Michael Reeves. Inside was a day pass to the Elite Shooters Club and a handwritten note. "Nathan would want you to keep your promise. 3 years is long enough to grieve alone. Come back to the living." Now, standing in the Elite Shooters Club with Blake Radcliffe's challenge hanging in the air, Emma felt something stir within her, a spark of the person she had been before grief hollowed her out. As she lifted the Glock, muscle memory took over. The world narrowed to 3 points: herself, the gun, and the target. Emma took a deep breath, held it for a moment, then slowly exhaled halfway and squeezed the trigger. The shot rang out, crisp and clean in the hushed range. Through the settling echo, the mechanical whir of the target retrieval system seemed unnaturally loud. Blake maintained his amused expression, though uncertainty crossed his features as he noted Emma's textbook stance. The target moved slowly toward them, building suspense with each mechanical click. When the paper target finally arrived, a perfect hole marked the dead center of the bullseye. The silence that followed was profound, a vacuum of sound where Blake and his entourage struggled to process what they were seeing. Emma calmly placed the Glock on the counter, her expression unchanged. Blake snatched the target, examining it closely. "Beginner's luck," he finally declared, his voice carrying a sharp edge. "Anyone can get lucky once." Rebecca stepped forward, her professional mask slipping to reveal genuine admiration. "That was an exceptional shot." "Miss Miller," Emma supplied quietly. "Emma Miller." Rebecca nodded, offering a smile that was both apologetic and impressed. "Miss Miller, perhaps you'd like to try our advanced range facilities. Clearly, you're not a beginner." Before Emma could respond, Blake interjected. "Hold on. One lucky shot doesn't make her a pro. Let's see if she can do it again, this time with real stakes." An uncomfortable murmur ran through the growing crowd of spectators. $50,000, Blake announced, pulling his checkbook from his jacket pocket. "If you can hit 3 bullseyes in a row at 75 yards. If you miss even one, you publicly admit you cheated, and leave." Senator Williams placed a cautioning hand on Blake's shoulder. "Blake, perhaps this isn't the time." Blake shrugged off the touch. "What's the matter? Afraid your little trick won't work 3 times in a row?" Emma considered simply walking away. She had come today only because of her promise to Nathan, not to engage in public spectacles. But something in Blake's dismissive arrogance awakened a dormant fire within her, a sense of injustice not just for herself, but for everyone who had ever been underestimated or excluded. "I'll take your challenge," Emma said softly. "On one condition. If I win, the $50,000 goes to the Veterans Support Foundation." Blake hesitated only briefly before nodding. "Fine. It's not like you'll win anyway." As Emma moved to the 75-yard mark, Rebecca approached her. "Miss Miller, you should know that Mr. Radcliffe holds the club record at this distance. No one has beaten his score in 5 years." Emma nodded, appreciating the warning. "Thank you for your concern, Miss Johnson. But I'll be fine." Rebecca studied her, noting the quiet confidence that seemed at odds with Emma's unassuming appearance. Blake was making a show of the event now. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced to the substantial crowd, "we are about to witness either the most impressive fluke in shooting history, or the most embarrassing failure. 3 bullseyes at 75 yards with a standard handgun, impossible for an amateur." Emma loaded fresh magazines methodically as she prepared. Memories of Nathan's lessons filtered through her mind. When the pressure is on, he had told her, fall back on your training. Let your body remember what your mind might forget under stress. The range had gone completely silent, all attention focused on the confrontation unfolding. For the first shot, Emma took slightly longer to aim, adjusting to the increased distance. The crack of the gun was followed by another perfect hit. Blake's jaw tightened visibly. The second shot came more quickly, with Emma adjusting her stance minutely before firing. Another bullseye. Before taking the third shot, Emma twisted her wedding ring once, feeling Nathan's presence as strongly as if he were standing beside her. The final shot split the air and hit dead center again. Blake's face had drained of color, his expression frozen between disbelief and fury. Rebecca returned with the 3 targets, displaying them for verification. There was no question, 3 perfect shots at a distance that would challenge even experienced marksmen. "Congratulations, Ms. Miller," Rebecca said, unable to keep the admiration from her voice. "That was remarkable." Blake snatched the targets, examining them with increasing desperation. "This is impossible," he hissed. No one walks in off the street and shoots like this. She must have rigged something. Emma remained calm, though steel entered her voice. I believe we had an agreement, Mr. Radcliffe. Agreement with a cheater? Blake's voice rose. I'm not paying $50,000 based on some trick. Rebecca intervened. Mr. Radcliffe, Ms. Miller's performance was witnessed by dozens of members, including Senator Williams. The shots were legitimate. Blake rounded on her, his finger jabbing the air inches from her face. Know your place, Rebecca. One word from me to the board and you're finished here. The threat silenced Rebecca, but her expression hardened. Emma watched the exchange with quiet intensity. If you're accusing me of cheating, Emma said evenly, perhaps we should move this discussion to a more private setting. Blake misinterpreted her intent. Private? So you can avoid the consequences? No. Let's settle this right here. He turned to the crowd. Ladies and gentlemen, I propose a real challenge, 1 week from today. A formal competition. Me versus our mystery sharpshooter. 10 stations, varying distances, with club-provided equipment to ensure everything's fair. Emma realized she had unintentionally stepped into something much larger than a simple challenge. Part of her wanted to retreat back into anonymity, but a stronger part knew she couldn't back down. I accept, she said quietly. Same terms. If I win, $50,000 to the Veterans Support Foundation. Blake's smile didn't reach his eyes. Deal. And when I win, you publicly explain whatever trick you used today. As the crowd dispersed, Rebecca approached Emma again. That was either very brave or very foolish, she said. Blake doesn't lose gracefully, and he has considerable influence here. Emma nodded, the adrenaline fading and leaving her feeling drained. I didn't come here looking for trouble. I just wanted to practice. Rebecca studied her thoughtfully. Yet you shot like a professional. Who are you really, Emma Miller? Emma gathered her belongings. Just someone keeping a promise, she replied, her voice barely audible. What neither Emma nor anyone else knew was that Blake was already making a phone call, instructing his personal assistant to find out everything about Emma Miller. No matter what it takes. The tremor in his voice betrayed more than anger. It revealed fear. Because Blake had recognized something in Emma's shooting that the others had missed, the distinctive technique of military training, executed with a precision that couldn't be faked. News of the confrontation spread quickly through Boston's upper circles. By evening, Blake Radcliffe was inundated with messages from friends, rivals, and journalists seeking details about the mysterious woman who had challenged his supremacy. Seated in his penthouse overlooking the Charles River, he swirled aged scotch in a crystal tumbler, his post-victory celebration ritual now a means to calm frayed nerves. Jessica Thompson, his girlfriend, scrolled through her phone, monitoring the social chatter with increasing concern. They're calling her the unknown marksman, Jessica reported. Someone posted a blurry video of her last shot. It's already got thousands of views. Blake drained his glass. One lucky day doesn't make her a marksman. By next week, everyone will know she's a fraud. Jessica looked up, her expression unusually serious. Blake, honey, those weren't lucky shots. I've watched you compete for years. She's good. Really good. The sharp ring of his phone interrupted their conversation. Blake checked the caller ID and immediately straightened. It was his investigator. Tell me you found something, he demanded without preamble. The voice on the other end was apologetic. Not much yet, Mr. Radcliffe. Emma Miller, 35, works as a senior accountant at Meridian Financial. Moved to Boston from Virginia Beach 3 years ago. Clean record. Pays her taxes. Keeps to herself. No social media presence. No competitive shooting background. Blake's frustration mounted. That's impossible. Nobody shoots like that without training. Dig deeper. After ending the call, Blake paced the length of his living room. I don't understand. Who is she? Where did she learn to shoot like that? Jessica sat down her phone, watching him with growing unease. Blake, maybe it's time to let this go. Pay the charity. Chalk it up as an off day. Blake stopped abruptly, turning to her with an intensity that made her flinch. This isn't about the money. It's about my reputation. My legacy. Across town, Emma sat at her kitchen table, staring at her phone. Michael Reeves had called 3 times since she'd left the range. The shooting community was smaller than most people realized, especially among those with military connections. Emma brewed a cup of tea and carried it to her small balcony, the events of the day playing through her mind. A part of her regretted accepting Blake's challenge. The attention was unwelcome. Yet another part felt strangely liberated, as though something long dormant had awakened. Emma's phone buzzed again, displaying an unfamiliar number. After a moment's hesitation, she answered. "Miss Miller, this is Rebecca Johnson from the Elite Shooters Club." Emma tensed. "Emma Johnson. What can I do for you?" Rebecca's voice carried an undertone of urgency. "I probably shouldn't be calling you, but I thought you should know. Blake has people looking into your background. He's convinced you cheated somehow." Emma closed her eyes. Unsurprised. But disappointed. "Thank you for the warning, Miss Johnson. But I have nothing to hide." Rebecca continued, her voice lower. "Look, I don't know who you are or where you learned to shoot like that, but Blake Radcliffe has a lot of influence in this city. His family practically owns half of Boston. If he feels threatened, he can make things difficult for you." Emma appreciated the concern, but years as a military spouse had taught her the difference between real threats and intimidation tactics. "I'll be careful," she promised. "But I intend to honor our agreement." After the call, Emma opened a small wooden box she rarely touched. Inside were Nathan's medals, handwritten letters, and their wedding photo, still pressed behind glass, the edges worn soft by time. Beneath the folded funeral flag lay Nathan's logbook, a record of training sessions and missions. She flipped through the pages until she found the ones where he had documented their practice sessions together. His handwriting was sharp and methodical. Emma, 50 yards, 9-10 bullseyes. Natural talent. Better than most recruits. The next morning, for the first time in 3 years, Emma called in sick to work. Instead of heading to her office, she drove to a public shooting range, far from the Elite Shooters Club and its curated clientele. For 8 hours, she practiced with quiet intensity, working through every drill Nathan had ever taught her. Each shot was a conversation with his memory, a promise kept. A connection sustained across the divide between life and death. That evening, her phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. Blake requesting rule changes for competition. Now wants 10 different firearms at varying distances. Board approved. Emma read it twice. She understood the implication immediately. Blake was reshaping the competition to highlight his breadth of training, areas where he assumed she couldn't keep up. Her reply was simple. "Thank you for letting me know. No changes needed on my end." Across the city, Blake received the update with growing satisfaction. "Perfect," he told Jessica. 10 different stations. 10 different firearms. There's no way she can match my experience across that range of weapons." Jessica set her wine glass down carefully. "And if she does?" Blake's smile held no warmth. "She won't. But if by some miracle she gets close, I've arranged a little insurance policy." The day before the competition, Michael Reeves showed up at Emma's apartment unannounced. She opened the door, eyebrows raised. "You couldn't return a call?" he asked, his gruff tone undercut by the concern in his eyes. Emma stepped aside to let him in. "I've been busy," she said simply. Michael took in the sight of shooting manuals and scattered notepads on her table. "So I've heard. The whole community's talking about you and Radcliffe." They sat across from each other at her kitchen table. "Nathan would be proud, you know," Michael said after a moment. "Not just of the shooting. Of you, stepping back into the world." Emma's eyes burned with sudden, unexpected tears. "I'm not sure that's what I'm doing." "This wasn't planned, Michael." He nodded. "The best battles rarely are, Em. But sometimes they're exactly what we need." He reached across the table and rested his weathered hand over hers. "You're not alone in this. I've made some calls. There'll be friends in the audience tomorrow." As he stood to leave, he paused at the door, expression sober. "One more thing, be careful with Radcliffe. Guy like that, with his money and his pride? He's not used to losing. And he won't take it well if he does. Nathan would want you to watch your six." Emma nodded. "I will. And Michael, thank you. For the past. For everything." His smile was warm. "Just keeping a promise to a brother. That's what we do." Meanwhile, Blake Radcliffe's investigation into Emma Miller had shifted from wounded pride to full-blown obsession. The initial background check had yielded frustratingly little. No criminal record. No competitive shooting history. Not even a speeding ticket. On paper, Emma Miller was the picture of ordinariness, an unremarkable accountant living a quiet life. "I want you to focus on Virginia Beach," Blake told his investigator. "She lived there before Boston. Check shooting clubs, gun ranges, instructors. Anyone who might remember her. And that wedding ring she keeps touching, find out about her husband." The investigator's voice remained professionally neutral, despite the increasingly demanding requests. "I'll look into it, Mr. Radcliffe. But marriage records in Virginia. I don't care what it takes." Blake snapped into the phone. "The competition is in 2 days. I need information now." He ended the call with a sharp swipe, his frustration simmering just beneath the surface. Turning, he found himself face to face with a framed photo on the wall, his younger self, triumphant and beaming, gold medal in hand from the Olympics 8 years prior. The Blake in that photo radiated joy. A kind of joy that had faded as accolades piled up and the burden of remaining at the top had slowly hollowed him out. The breakthrough came late that evening. Blake was analyzing slow-motion footage of Emma's shooting form when his phone rang again. He answered it instantly. "Virginia Beach was the key, Mr. Radcliffe," his investigator said without preamble. "Emma Miller is the widow of Master Chief Nathan Miller, U.S. Navy SEAL. Killed in action 3 years ago. Highly decorated sniper." Blake felt a chill crawl down his spine. "A SEAL sniper?" he asked, voice low. "Are you certain?" "Absolutely," the investigator replied. "Miller was well known in military circles. Apparently, training his wife was something of a hobby. One of his former teammates remembered him saying she was a natural, with exceptional potential." Blake gripped the phone tighter. "Is there anything else?" "Just one thing," came the reply. "Miller had a nickname in the teams. They called him the Ghost. For his ability to hit targets no one else could see. He held several unofficial long-distance records in the special ops community." The call ended. Blake stood frozen. Emma Miller wasn't a fluke, and she wasn't a fraud. She was the protégée of a legend. The story Blake had been constructing, that he was unmasking a lucky amateur, was disintegrating. Worse, the real narrative now forming was far more compelling to the public eye. The widow of a fallen hero, stepping into the arena not for glory, but to honor the man who taught her everything. And he, Blake Radcliffe, had mocked her. Across town, Emma remained unaware of Blake's discovery. Her focus was singular: preparation. On Thursday evening, she received another call from Rebecca Johnson. "Ms. Miller, I wanted to update you on the competition details for Saturday. There's been another change." Emma already knew what was coming. "Let me guess," she said flatly. "Another tweak that just happens to favor Mr. Radcliffe." Rebecca hesitated. "The scoring system has been adjusted. Each station will now be weighted based on difficulty. The final station will count for 30% of the total score." Emma's stomach tightened. "And that final station?" "It's a custom Macmillan TC-338, Rebecca admitted. "A long-range precision rifle Blake has exclusive experience with. There are only 5 in civilian hands in the Northeast." Emma exhaled slowly. This was a tactical move, designed to exploit what Blake assumed was her weakest link. But it was more than that. It was desperation, thinly veiled. After the call, Emma sat quietly at her kitchen table, hands resting on Nathan's logbook. If Blake was digging into her background, it wouldn't take long now to piece together who Nathan was, what he meant to her. And just how far Blake would go to protect his legacy was still unknown. The next morning, she made the choice she'd been delaying. She drove to a specialized range on the outskirts of the city, a facility with extended distances and private access. As she pulled into the lot, she noticed a black SUV already parked. Government plates. Standing beside it, arms crossed, was a tall man with a military bearing that was impossible to miss. He stepped forward. "Mrs. Miller. Commander Wilson. Former Team 3. I served with Nathan in Baghdad in '16. Emma frowned. "I don't recall Nathan mentioning you." "We weren't in the same squad," he replied. "But in the teams, everyone knew the ghost. Heard you might appreciate some pointers on the Macmillan TC-338. I've got some experience with that platform." Emma gave a slight nod. For the next 4 hours, Commander Wilson walked her through the weapon's nuances. The recoil timing. The minute sight adjustments. The rhythm of breathing through a magnified scope. "Nathan taught you well with handguns," he remarked after a string of solid hits. "You've got his patience. His breathing control. This isn't so different. Just magnified. Trust what you know." By early afternoon, Emma was hitting targets at distances she wouldn't have imagined possible even days ago. Each successful shot chipped away at her doubts, her grief, her fear. Replaced now by clarity. As they packed up, Wilson handed her a small notebook. "From Nathan," he said simply. "He gave it to me for safekeeping years ago. Told me to deliver it if you ever picked up a rifle again." Emma opened it carefully, her heart thudding. Inside were handwritten notes, refinements to her training, advanced calculations for windage and elevation, even a few private lines meant just for her. "Em, if you're reading this, I guess you've stepped back into the arena. Remember, the shot you don't take doesn't miss, but it doesn't count either. Trust your instincts. You were always the better shot, just needed to believe it." Nathan's distance calculations and wind adjustment formulas, each scribbled in a neat, practiced hand, were more than just numbers. They were years of expertise distilled into pages of a notebook Emma now held as if it were sacred. These weren't just notes. They were his legacy. "Thank you, Commander," she said quietly. "But why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Commander Wilson's expression softened. "When you lose a brother in the teams, you look after what mattered to him." He paused, then added, "Nathan talked about you. A lot. Said you had the calmest hands he'd ever seen on a civilian. He was proud of you. Thought you could be one of us, if you'd wanted." As Wilson left, Emma remained standing in the gravel lot, the notebook still clutched in her hands. What had begun as a private promise to herself, and Nathan had shifted. This wasn't just a contest anymore, it had become symbolic. A quiet confrontation between two worlds, Blake's polished, privileged dominance and Nathan's humble, quiet excellence. It was the old battle, arrogance versus integrity. Entitlement versus earned skill. Showmanship against substance. That evening in his penthouse, Blake received the final dossier on Nathan Miller. Each new detail chipped away at the narrative he had crafted. Miller's distinguished service, his leadership within the SEALs, the confidential nature of the mission that had ended his life. A hero in every sense. Blake poured himself another drink, waving off Jessica's watchful concern. "It doesn't change anything," he muttered. "Experience wins over sentiment. Every time." Jessica tilted her head. "Blake, maybe it's time to pull back. Pay the donation. Cancel the match. This is spiraling." He slammed the glass onto the table, the sharp crack silencing her. "Cancel? Confirm every whisper that I'm afraid of her?" He scoffed, reaching for his phone. "No. Tomorrow goes exactly as planned." He dialed a number from memory, his voice cold. "It's Blake. Is everything arranged for tomorrow?" The conversation was brief. When he hung up, Jessica was still watching him, her expression unreadable. "What was that about?" she asked quietly. Blake gave her a practiced smile. It didn't reach his eyes. "Just ensuring a level playing field, my dear. Nothing more." Competition day. The Elite Shooters Club buzzed with energy. For the first time, the board had opened the event to the public, transforming what had been a private challenge into a full-blown spectacle. Press, sponsors, photographers, it was a curated storm. Inside, Rebecca Johnson supervised the final checks. Something wasn't right. Several of the stations had minor but intentional modifications, slight trigger adjustments, unfamiliar sights, or unusual recoil springs. Nothing overtly illegal, but enough to tilt the odds in favor of someone who knew exactly what to expect. In a private corner, Rebecca found Emma. "I've completed the equipment check," she said in a hushed voice. "There are irregularities. Nothing I can officially flag, but enough to cause problems for someone unprepared." Emma gave a small nod. "Thank you for the warning." She had expected as much. Moments later, Blake arrived with his entourage, clad in sponsor-branded gear, flashing smiles for cameras, the embodiment of sports celebrity. Spotting Emma, he approached with his usual artificial charm. "Miss Miller," he said, emphasizing her last name with subtle mockery. "I trust you slept well?" The unspoken message was clear. "I know who you are now." He added, "The pressure can be overwhelming. No shame in walking away. It's not for everyone." Emma met his gaze unwavering. "I'll manage, Mr. Radcliffe," she said calmly. "My husband taught me a few things about performing under pressure." The arena resembled a stadium. Digital displays tracked scores. Spectators whispered and pointed as competitors took their marks. 3 certified range masters rotated between the 10 shooting stations. The atmosphere felt less like a competition and more like a trial by fire. As Emma approached her first station, she noticed them, seated quietly in the back row. A group of men with unmistakable military posture. Veterans. Brothers in arms. Michael Reeves among them. He gave her a subtle nod. Emma inhaled slowly, grounding herself. Station after station, Blake moved with clinical precision. His form flawless. His transitions smooth. Years of competitive experience were on full display. Emma's approach was different. Silent. Still. Each movement deliberate. Her breathing slow, almost meditative. She didn't rush. She didn't need to. The space between her shots felt charged with memory and discipline. By the 4th station, Blake held a modest lead. The crowd buzzed. The underdog was holding her own, but the champion remained ahead. Then came Station 5. The firearm, a modified Sig Sauer. Something felt off the moment her fingers curled around the grip. The trigger pull was heavier than standard, subtle, but significant. Enough to throw off anyone unfamiliar with the specific calibration. Emma paused. She heard Nathan's voice in her mind, crisp and calm. "Equipment fails. Conditions change. Adapt and overcome." She exhaled. Adjusted. Recalibrated in real time. And fired. Bullseye. She adjusted her stance, recalibrated her grip, and matched Blake's score despite the trigger sabotage. As the competition progressed, a pattern emerged. Blake excelled with competition-tuned weapons, lightweight, precision-calibrated, designed for sport. Emma, however, demonstrated consistent excellence across all firearm types, particularly military-grade platforms. Her training, honed in silence and forged through purpose, was built not for applause but survival. By the 8th station, Blake's lead had evaporated. The scores were statistically tied. The audience, initially drawn by Blake's celebrity, had begun to shift, their attention caught by the woman in the navy shirt whose stillness seemed more powerful than his bravado. At the break before the 9th station, Blake approached her. "Impressive performance, Mrs. Miller," he said, his voice low but calculated. "Your husband would be proud. The ghost techniques are distinctive. I did my homework." Emma's hands, mid-adjustment, paused for half a beat. The deliberate use of Nathan's call sign wasn't lost on her. But her expression didn't waver. "Then you know he valued integrity above all else," she said. "Mr. Radcliffe. Something to consider as we finish today." Blake's smirk flickered. When the 9th station concluded, the scores were dead even. Everything came down to the 10th and final station, a Macmillan TC-338 precision rifle, set at a distance rarely attempted in civilian competitions. The moment Emma took her position, she noticed it. The stock adjusted ever so slightly off-center, the scope calibrated just enough to throw off an unfamiliar shooter. She didn't flinch. Instead, she pulled out Nathan's notebook. His handwritten calculations for distance correction, wind drift, and elevation adjustment guided her through the necessary compensation. Blake shot first, confident, poised. 9 of his 10 shots landed within the innermost rings. It was an exceptional score, and it set the bar at nearly unbeatable. "Not everyone is built for championship pressure," he remarked, loud enough to earn a few laughs from his entourage and a few cameras. Emma didn't reply. She lay prone behind the rifle, breathing slow and steady. The world narrowed. The crowd, the lights, even Blake faded. All that remained was the target, and Nathan's voice in her memory, calm and clear. "The difference between pressure and peace is preparation." One shot. Then another. Bullseye. Perfect. By the 6th, the crowd had fallen into a reverent silence. Her stillness, her focus, it was unlike anything they'd seen. Then, just before her final shot, a flash of light, reflected off a camera or perhaps a watch, cut across her line of sight. From someone standing too close to Blake's circle. Emma paused. A long breath. She centered herself. Let it go. Her final shot cracked across the range, clean, decisive. Bullseye. The arena erupted. Applause broke into cheers, and then a standing ovation. The scoreboard updated in real time. Final results. First place, Emma Miller. Second place, Blake Radcliffe. Rebecca Johnson stepped forward to announce it officially, but the applause made her wait. When it finally settled, Blake approached Emma, jaw tight, smile gone. He extended his hand, but his voice was ice. "This isn't over." Emma met his gaze evenly. "For today it is. And I believe you owe $50,000 to the Veteran Support Foundation." That broke him. "You think this proves something? That a military widow with a lucky streak can replace a lifetime of training?" This was a stunt. A publicity trick. The equipment was rigged. He raised his voice, turning to the crowd as if seeking validation. Instead, they stared back in stunned silence. Rebecca's voice cut through cleanly. "The equipment was rigged, Mr. Radcliffe." She held up a tablet, displaying a paused video feed. "But not in Ms. Miller's favor." The image, Blake's technical advisor, clearly visible, adjusting firearm settings in the equipment room. "Our system records all access. There's no ambiguity." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Blake stood frozen. He wasn't just facing defeat. He was facing disgrace. And everyone saw it. By Sunday morning, video clips of Emma's final shots, and Blake's meltdown, had gone viral. What had begun as a niche sporting event had transformed into a cultural moment, a showdown between privilege and quiet excellence. Emma's inbox overflowed. Journalists, brands, veteran organizations. Everyone wanted a piece of the story. But she made only one call. Michael Reeves answered on the first ring. "It's gotten bigger than I expected," she said. "What do I do now?" There was a pause. Then, his voice steady. "That depends. Do you want privacy, or justice?" Emma didn't hesitate. "Blake hasn't paid the donation. And the equipment tampering was fraud. There should be consequences." That ending is strong, deeply earned, and emotionally satisfying. It circles back to the heart of Emma's journey, fulfilling a promise, finding purpose, and creating impact beyond competition. The themes of quiet strength, integrity, and transformation are beautifully wrapped up through her evolution and the legacy she builds in Nathan's name.